when you negotiate a record deal, there's a number of issues that you contend with, from how many albums you're going to grant the record label, how many options. I had mentioned earlier that a typical U.S. deal might be a 6 or 7, maybe even an 8 album deal. And those options are always in favor of the label, meaning that we're going to put out this album. If we like it, we'll have the option to pick up another. If you do like that, we have the option to pick up another, and so on. And that's a fight. Obviously, as the artist, you want the least amount of albums possible. Why? You think, intuitively, you might think the opposite. Oh, if they gave me an 8-album deal, they must really like me. Well, no. They're just trying to, have you for as long as possible. The shorter the deal, if you have success, the better it is for you. Why? Because you can renegotiate. If I have a 3-album deal and album 1, 2, and 3 do amazing, guess what? I'm a free agent now. Just think sports. If they want to get me, they got to sign me, and I can set my price. And when I negotiated my original deal, when I was a nobody and I had my demo tape and I was thankful that I was meeting anybody, obviously you didn't have the same ability, or typically you wouldn't have had the same stature or success to demand the kind of things that you might be able to get in renegotiation. So options, for example, one of those. Tour support, for example, is something that, although is less important to some extent in urban music deals, because touring isn't really a promotional tool. It's more of a money-making tool for the artists. Urban shows, to those of viewers out there who have seen them, there's a couple good acts out there, but they're late-night kind of club, club dates. Whereas in the old days, you had rock acts out on the road. If you're doing a rock deal, for example, you're going to want what we call tour support. And typically, what the label will agree to is what we call deficit tour support. And what does that mean? If your tour is, let's say, a 2-month tour, and you're going to do, let's say that's 60 days, let's say you do 45 dates, I'm just making this up, and you're going to draw in, again with easy numbers, $100,000 over the 45 dates, but it's going to cost you $140,000 to be on the road, they'll pick up the 40 grand. They're not going to say, here's 140, go keep your 100. That's the deficit. You're going to make 100, we'll pick up, and out of that 40, you'll then negotiate with the label that only part of that will be recoupable, which brings me to the magic of record deals, the concept of recoupability. What does that mean? I oftentimes get amused when I read in the broadsheets or the regular non-industry press, people analyzing, or on the news channels, how much somebody's record deal is worth. Typically what they do is they add up all of if every option were to be picked up at the maximum amount, add them all up, that's what my deal was worth. Well, that's really not accurate. Deals are worth whatever actually gets picked up and paid for, and so forth. The way that record companies organize their books, which has always been controversial, is that any time that they spend money on you, you got to pay it back. You don't have to pay it back out of your pocket as if it's a loan, like, hey, where's my $50 I loaned you last week? No, but out of the money you earn, your royalty income. Remember I gave you the Beatles example. If I'm getting, let's say, $1.50 a record, if they spend $100,000 on me, every $1.50 goes to pay back that $100,000. That's what we call recoupment. Now, the mechanical royalties typically are not subject to the recoupment. So you have the 2 sets of royalties. One will go to recoup, one won't. If you do have them recouped, that's what they call cross-collateralized. So don't ever let your deal be crossed. Otherwise, you're in big trouble. Especially if there's samples, because then you're going to end up really irritating somebody. We're getting in a lawsuit probably, moreover. But the idea of recoupability brings up a lot of issues that artists are historically irritated over. You would think that once you've paid back out of your earnings the amount that they've spent on recording you, promoting you, and so forth, that you'd own your masters. Well, we paid you back. Well, that's not at all how it works. They still own the masters, unless you are a very, very big artist with a huge amount of juice. the record company's going to own the masters. So the ownership of the masters will typically sit with the record company, whereas the ownership of the underlying songs will stay with the writers. So if you're in a band and you play drums and you don't write anything, you don't own anything. You own possibly a piece of income that you've had a band deal with your mates on, but the record company owns the masters. You didn't write any of the songs, so you don't own any of that. You'll end up having a revenue stream.